Oh look, a box has arrived in the garage. That means it is Bike in a Box Day once again on this channel, and I'm sure you saw the thumbnail and thought to yourself,
this bike again? Really? I've already seen tons of videos out there of people reviewing and unboxing this.
but this is not that. This is not the cheapest electric dirt bike on the internet and certainly doesn't claim to be. In fact, they claim to be a little bit more comparable to the ETM RTR. We'll see about that. This right here is not a Valtinsu, it's not a Yozma, but in fact an Ionic Moto. That is actually the name. No, it's not. I tried to catch myself, but it's actually Ionic Moto, not Iconic. Unless it's amazing to ride, in which case it could be Iconic too. And again, I know what you're thinking.
Who cares what it's called? It's the same anyway.
Well, if this was the Alpha Mini, I'd say you're 100% right, but this is not that. This right here is the Alpha Pro. May look the same, but it's a little bit bigger and a lot more powerful. Let's get it out of the box and I'll show you what I mean. Ooh. As of recording this, it's Halloween time, so I decided to go with the orange color scheme. I've also never owned a KTM, and right away I'm noticing that this has the big wheel kit. This is the front, and this is a 17 rather than the standard 12-inch front. Now we can really see the difference in this against all of those other ones. While it might look the same in pictures as the EM5 or the Alpha Mini, it is really, truly much bigger, especially compared to something like this, which is representative of the same size of most other 48-volt bikes. The Alpha Pro here is 5 inches longer and 4 inches taller. And against the RTR here, these are basically the exact same size, although next to each other, this one still looks a little bit bigger, but again, that's because this one has the big wheel kit. And I'm actually looking at the wheels against the RTRs here, and I'm thinking that they might actually have the exact same size hubs, which means that the big wheel kit on this bike could be swappable to the RTR. Still a few things left to do on this bike out of the box. I gotta check all the bolts, make sure everything's nice and tight, and I gotta plug this into the wall and give the battery some charge so that way we can take this out for a rip.
All right, here we go. Although with the big chunky off-road tires, I think we need a change of scenery. That's better. Right off the bat, you're feeling all 72 volts of it. And as this is the first time riding this just straight out of the box, I don't know exactly what the line current is on this, so I don't know what the full wattage is. I think on the website they claim 6,500 watts, and I think this bike also has a far driver. I'm pretty sure it does because the website also sells a Bluetooth dongle, so we're definitely gonna figure out what this is set for and certainly make some tweaks. I mean, right off the bat, if this mile an hour is anything to be believed, it gets up to 40 pretty easily, and I have a little bit more throttle left to go. Whoa, 50. I don't feel like I'm going 50 miles an hour.
Well, I guess we will actually have to break out the Speedo app and see what this says versus that.
Yeah, see, that's saying 47 miles an hour. I'm coasting. Well, I kind of hit a limit there. It said 53, almost 54.
Let's see what the lie detector says. Oh, 47. Close-ish, but this is overestimating.
One thing I'm noticing right off the bat is that this throttle curve here is pretty punchy. But then once you get up to like 35 miles an hour or so, and even if you're still on the throttle, it's very slow to increase. It's like it gets there and then it kind of stays. Yep, I'd say it's punchy, all right, and dizzy. And being as punchy as that is out of the box, and they say this is tunable as well, it just really makes me wonder, how much can you really squeeze out of this? Let's see about braking. Whoa. Dives a little bit. The brakes are pretty good, although the front here is a little spongy. I think it just is needing a top-up of brake fluid, and it even says right here that it's DOT, so it's not mineral oil like mountain bike brakes like all the other electric dirt bikes are that are out there. But I don't know which DOT that is. It doesn't have a number associated with it. And speaking of brakes, the brake lines themselves actually look pretty legit. They're stainless steel braided lines, and they actually have like fittings and banjos like you would see on any motorcycle, really. But at the same time, it does also look like it's a cheap, low-cost option, which makes sense. It's like something you would see at the bargain bin in Alibaba or Amazon or any of those other places. Makes sense, though. This is a cheap bike.
That it is, but it depends on how you look at it. Let's first compare this bike to the current e-bike darling, the Yozma IN10, or even Ionic Moto's own Alpha Mini equivalent. Both of these claim to be the cheapest and best budget bikes out there, even though they're not. Although the specs are seriously impressive for these. The Alpha Mini currently goes for $1,200, so you're getting some serious bang for your buck. The Alpha Pro, on the other hand, is double that. So I know what you're probably thinking.
Why would I pay double the price? That's stupid.
That it is, except for the fact that it's not being compared to the IN10, it's being compared to the RTR. Ah, see, now not looking so pricey. This thing's $1,000 less, and as we'll see, the specs line up against the RTRs pretty well. But now the question is, how's it hold up on the trail?
I think it's time we find that out. Oh yeah, there we go. Wow, this feels really good so far as a off-road bike. I think this is where the big wheels really come into play. Having a 17 in the front and a 14 in the rear rather than a 14 in the front and a 12 in the rear really makes a difference. It feels more like an actual full-size bike. It's getting closer to it at least. This is just confirmation that I really have to swap the wheels on this if I can. Put it on the Electro Co, give that a rip off-road, see how that feels. But it's nice that you get that out of the box with this one.
So what else do you get out of the box? Well, you get a 72 volt battery, about 6.5 kilowatts of power, a top speed claim of 53 miles an hour, dash display, 3-speed mode, all the usual stuff, all wrapped up in a very modern looking frame. And just to touch briefly on the looks, I really like it. I like that they have the color scheme played out where it actually takes the seat and goes straight into the shroud, so it's one big bold cut line. I think it looks really cool. Although the plastics on this bike seem a little bit weird to me. Maybe it's just because I'm used to having dirt bike plastics being that glossy finish, but everything on this bike for the most part is a matte finish, although it does have some elements like the front shroud where it's a little bit shiny on the top and the bottom, but then matte everywhere else. And then the front fender in particular has a matte finish, and with the orange, it just looks weird, and honestly, it just looks cheap. So I'm not 100% sure if this is a style choice or it's just cheap plastics. Again, it might be my bias, but when I see matte finished plastics on a dirt bike, I just think lowest bidder. But riding this thing around earlier, I found another thing that made me think lowest bidder.
I am noticing something weird with the suspension, listen. Every time I hit, there's like a weird hollowy sound going on in the rear somewhere. And besides that weird noise, it actually feels pretty good. I looked at the rear spring and it actually looks a little bit like it's got a progressive spring. The spring is coiled a little bit tighter at the top, so it actually does feel, despite all this bumpiness, pretty good. Oh, I found the noise. It's this. The little mudguard is not a hard plastic thing. It's actually a very flexible and floppy piece of rubber, so I'm guessing when I compress, it's enough that it actually hits the tire a little bit and is rubbing. And I don't know if that's just because I'm putting too much weight on this spring, or if that just is an inevitability. Either way, I think we probably need to, at the very least, trim this thing down. In fact, I'm surprised they didn't have like a little square cutout. The Mototech does this, where it actually has a hole, so it actually tucks in to where the shock is attached. So that way, the very bottom of this actually goes behind that rear shock and never makes any contact with the wheel whatsoever. Maybe that's something I have to do to this thing. But while we're here, might as well go over a few things that I'm not so keen on, that I'm just kind of on. First one is the seat that I'm noticing right away. This is really uncomfortable, but again, almost all dirt bike seats are. They're all 2x4s. This one, though, it looks like most of the padding is right here. In fact, you can see that with the key, because this actually has a key slot right here, and then the whole thing with some of the plastics comes up. You can see all this stuff, we'll go into that later, but the seat right here, you can see that the majority of the padding right here, but where I'm sitting, more like right here, where it's not much between this and the hard plastic bottom. Another thing that I noticed with this, and probably has to do with the cheapness or universalness of this, is the display here. Now this display, you can see this on any number of e-bike or e-scooter. It's very basic, very universal. It's one of those parts that just everybody uses. But because of that, a few things that I've noticed. One is that it says PAS, which stands for pedal assist, and there's no pedals here. Also, it defaults to 0, meaning 0 pedal assist. So if you're on an e-bicycle, fine, you're just using your pedal power. But in this case, if I just want to go, nothing. It's almost like it's in neutral. So every time I want to take off, I have to actually hit the plus button here to get up to at least level 1, or a few times up to level 3. And now I have the full power. But it's not all bad. Even though this is a bargain bin kind of pick and choose parts special, it does mean that it has some really good components that I would probably be swapping out otherwise. Like a few things up front, like the brakes I mentioned already. These ones are pretty beefy and I think they would hold up pretty well. They actually have some legit sized brake pads in there, so I think that's some really good stopping power. Also with the throttle, this might look familiar. This is a Suron style throttle, so it has that Suron feel. It's really nice and smooth and crisp. It has a really good response on that. I really like that. It also has this, a big ol' 420 chain, something that is desperately needed on my Electro Co RTR. I know that they're working on it, and depending on when this video comes out, maybe it's already available, but this is a serious game changer because this is a legitimate motorcycle chain. This is something that you would see on all of the gas-powered pit bikes, and something that I won't have any troubles with, and I won't worry about at all of it potentially snapping with the power that this is putting out. I mean, it is multiple times thicker and beefier than any 35 chain. Here's another thing that I noticed. I actually found this out in the garage just rolling this around, but as you can see, I want to get turned around to go back up the trail here and just pushing it and turning it, but the turn angle on this bike is so short. It feels like you have to do a 70-point turn if you're just doing it like this. So I actually compared this to every other bike in the garage, and all of the other ones have a much greater turn angle than this one. This is just so short that it's actually noticeable. And I haven't quite noticed the turn angle when I'm riding it around, but then again, this is fairly straight. I'm not doing any super tight turns or U-turns or anything like that. Even in a corner like this, it's not that noticeable, but maybe if I'm doing something a little tighter, I will notice it. So another thing is body position. Overall, it's actually not that bad. First thing is the handlebars. They just feel way too short. I don't know how they are compared to the RTRs, but I feel like the RTRs are a little bit longer, or at the very least, a better bend, at least one that I would prefer. So I think this could do with a little bit wider of a bar. Also, foot peg position. This feels very familiar with my 48 volt Mototech, where the pegs are just a little bit too high up. I feel like I'm kind of squatting on this bike rather than sitting on it. I think this could really do, if it could, with some sort of drop peg. And overall, the frame feels ever so slightly clunky. I don't know quite how to describe it. It just doesn't feel as tight as, for example, the RTR frame. That's not to say this is not a terrible frame. Like, I actually feel like this is a little bit more confidence inspiring rather than the 48 volt Mototech or the 60 volt Mototech, where those frames just don't feel like they can support the power. But this, it has the power and I feel like it can support it.
So how does this bike compare to the RTR? Well, stats-wise, it's not far off, if not identical. Both 72 volts, both 25 amp hour capacity, 6.5 kilowatts, 8 kilowatts, 53 miles an hour, 55 miles an hour. Very, very close. Also, 6.5 kilowatts. While the website claims this is peak power, if you divide that by 72 volts, you get that that would draw 90 amps. And the website also shows that the controller is capable of 100 amps. That means I think that the 6.5 kilowatt number is actually nominal power. I also happen to know that the stock RTR's controller is only capable of 80 amps line current. That means it's 5.7 kilowatts nominal. So this bike is more powerful. And it's got the big wheels. And let's not forget, $1,000 less. It really makes you think. $1,000 is probably enough for me to forget about the cheap plastics and the weird display and instead think about putting that money that I saved towards other things like a Bluetooth dongle to tune it, or a wider set of bars, or some extra brake fluid, or maybe all of those things. That is quite a lot to start with out of the box, and pretty damn comparable if you ask me.
Ionic Moto, I guess you can go ahead and call yourself iconic. The Alpha Pro is pretty sick. See, I didn't mess that up, I accidentally called you Ionic Moto.